system robust. So whole now the view of any digital systems or digital, you can say a digital system changes from whatever we have done at the VLSI design course and whatever we will be doing over here. Okay. Since your base will be whatever you have learned in that course, because basic design is all known to you and we would be relying very heavily on that knowledge. Okay, but aim is to make system work at the sub block, block or the IC level. Okay, so as I said, basically at any digital system there are major issues are timing or synchronization, then there is a signaling, and there is a noise, and then power. If you look at any system, these four are the broad issues under which engineering has to be done to make things work. So I want a particular power for a system to operate with. So if there is a heavy energy consumption, I need to look at what are the remedies, what are the different methods which can be employed for reducing the power. Similarly, noise is also a very big issue. Okay, again looking at the strategies for reducing the noise, another big issue. Prior to these two, looking at the way you encode your symbols, because aim is to achieve a higher data rate. Bandwidth should be as high as possible. Speed is also always an issue with us. So apart from getting the flow of data under control that is determined by the timing, okay, we also look at the signaling of the events, because signaling also have a very heavy repercussions or impact on the power consumption as well as on the data rate, achievable data rate. So how do you encode your symbols? How do you encode your data? So what are the different ways, and how the encoding affects the power as well as it affects the data rate. So basically this will be the flow of our lectures throughout this. Towards the end, as I said, I would be looking at the architectural issues of any subsystem block data. So the first thing that I have taken is going to be the timing and synchronization. And in the timing and synchronization, it is all about having a control on the flow of the data, as we have been discussing in the past two lectures. So how do we control? As I said, one thing is that you have a global clock synchronous system where we have a single clock, and then whenever there is an edge is coming, there is a flow of data from previous block to the next block. Now in this situation, the drawback is that the time period of my clock has to be governed by the worst case. So because it is going to be a chain of combinational logical blocks, so whichever two pair of blocks is taking the maximum amount of time for data transfer for a given, I have to set my clock period according to that. Okay, I am assuming here that all the flip-flops are similar. I could have chosen a latch also, because latch is also it is also storage element. Latch is also a storage element. The difference we know, it's only that latch is a level sensitive, whereas flip-flop is a edge sensitive. Okay, so the flip-flop design is very robust in comparison to the latch. But then latch has its own benefits. It usually you are able to achieve a higher data rate, because latch is usually it uses less resources, has only one stage, whereas a flip-flop has two stages. It is a master as well as the slave. So latch is also very, very useful if you use it properly. You can actually increase the data rate by using the latches properly. But the latch has its own drawbacks. As I said, it is level sensitive in nature. So designing with latch or designing with flip-flop, both we should be looking at as we move forward. So we are looking at open loop timing, that's a global clock synchronous system, and as I said that I diagram is the timing budget, the way we do the timing budget. Okay, we look at the aperture, we look at the timing uncertainty, we look at the timing properties of the receiver and the transmitter. So timing property of receiver and transmitter means we are looking at the clock to Q delays. If it is a, remember, I'm talking about, or I'm assuming an edge triggered system. Suppose it is a level sensitive latches I'm using, there would be another property coming to picture, which is nothing but it's going to be a data property, that's a data to Q. Here I'm only looking at the clock to Q. Okay, remember that. So in a latch we have extra properties coming in whenever we discuss a latch based design. So data to Q, because data can also change. Whereas in my edge triggered based system, I assume Data is stable when it is getting sampled. So all you need to look at is a clock to Q2. Whereas this is not so in the case of a latch. Remember that. So the difference in the latch based design and the flip-flop based design. So as we said that to achieve a data rate, usually we have a limitation here in a synchronous global clock system. We have a limitation over there, and we have tried to find out the possible bit periods that we can achieve for this kind of a system. We did this exercise for both parallel as well as serial. In the case of parallel communication, it would be only one bit that is getting transferred from per wire. It would be only one bit that is getting transferred per wire or per node. Whereas in the case of a serial, there would be say 8 bits to be transferred one after the another. So the bit period reduces. The bit period reduces. Okay? So now we come to a little bit of discussion on closed loop timing. I would be not discussing this currently here because my focus is I will discuss the first methodology in detail, then we'll come to the second. Okay, but just to give you a flavor what happens in a closed loop timing, that is what I'm saying, that I am going to have a feedback system which controls the timing uncertainty. Okay, so aim is always to sample the data at the middle of the aperture time. It is always because here this is where I say is my sampling window, and my sampling window, as we know, it's nothing but from T setup to T hold, because within this my data is remaining stable. Within this my data is remaining stable. So T aperture is totally summation from T setup to T hold duration. Addition of these two duration is going to be your sampling time. Okay, and I want that the data should be sampled within this window, that too at the center of it. That too at the center of it. It may shift. I'm not saying it may shift, but ideally we say center is the point where it should be sampled of the T aperture or TA, as I would be calling it. Okay, so if this is the situation, I would always want my data to be sampled within T aperture or half of T aperture. Okay, so in the case of closed loop timing, because in global clock it may shift because of the timing uncertainty, it may shift. Okay, so here what we do is that we remove T timing. Remember in my T cycle, the T uncertainty plays a role. The T cycle is actually having one term coming from timing uncertainty. I can achieve a higher data rate if I can reduce my T cycle. And if T cycle is to be reduced, if I am able to remove that T uncertainty, naturally my T cycle can be reduced. Okay, if I am sure that every time a clock edge comes, it samples within T aperture, I need not have a T timing uncertainty. So that is what is done by this controller, closed loop timing controller. It is actually a feedback system. It actually a feedback system. So whenever there is a data transmission, okay, we have a system comprised of this block. I'm not going into the details of design of this block. So it is actually a kind of FSM based design which implements the feedback. It senses when the data is getting transmitted, and accordingly it shifts whatever is the clock. It generates a new clock which is then goes to the flip-flop where it is sampling. So it is not, this clock never goes to this D clock. It's actually a new clock, I clock, image clock. I clock is getting generated, which works depending on the sensing of the data which is getting transmitted at a particular instant. So it senses when the data is getting transmitted. Accordingly, it changes the delay. It delays or it prepones the arrival of the clock edge, so that every time sampling occurs here, it occurs within T aperture. So we need not have any, you can say, we don't want to have any estimation for the T uncertainty. But then extra, you can see extra resources are required over here, because every time a clock edge is coming, it has to be changed. So that sampling occurs always at the within T aperture window. Okay. So this usually leads you, advantage is that you can achieve a higher data. So now we move on to, there are other modifications also that we should be looking at, because as the system design changes, our resources also change a little bit. So I may not be using a single edge triggered, I may be going for a double edge triggered flip-flops. Okay. So now we move on to the timing nomenclature. As we all know, so I think this is something that you all know. Let us just discuss it. Okay, because clock is always it's not a steep, we all know that. It's going to be having a slant. So normally we assume that sampling happens at 50% of that period. That is a sampling instant. Otherwise, because there is a you can say slant ramp is there. Okay, so at any point sampling can happen. But for making our calculations, we always assume that it is V50% at which the sampling takes place. Okay, so it is a 50%. Also, all delays are specified from 50% of the. So 50% to 50% delay. This is how we would be computing our delays theoretically. Okay, setup time is also represented from that instant. Okay, so half of the rise time or half of the fall time of the. So T setup is an instant till the half of the rise time of my clock edge. Okay, similarly T hold is also from half of the rise time of my clock edge till wherever you want the data to remain stable, whatever is your T hold definition. Clear? So we will be measuring our delays from 50% point of my clock period. So if it is a flip flop, it would be a rising. If I am taking a rising edge triggered, positive edge triggered system. If it is a negative edge triggered, my point will be the half of the fall time. The total fall, say from 10 to 90%, or 90% to the 10%. So middle of that waveform, so the total waveform is 0 to 5. The middle point would be somewhere around 2.5. Okay. In the case of a latch, again these two edges will be important to me. But then we all know the delays are like you can say the timing property is reference to the rising edge, whereas the sampling property is reference to the falling edge. You know this change, this difference in latch and the flip flop. Whereas in the case of a flip flop, everything is reference to one edge, rising edge or the falling edge. In the case of a latch, the delay property is attached to the clock to Q delay is attached to the rising edge, and the sampling property is attached to the falling edge. At the same time, there is one additional property that relates to the change in data. So apart from clock to Q, we also have a data to Q delay. We also have a data to Q delay. So this is what is shown over here. So if I ask you to look at this diagram, it's a clock edge triggered flip flop. Okay. So this is how, if this is my clock, this is the center of the clock. Okay, and data is changing. So initial value, whatever may be, now a Y data is being transmitted, and ultimately Q has to become Y. Okay, so from this point to a certain time period that I have designated is going to be my T setup. Similarly, from the middle of the waveform to an instant which again I have budgeted is going to my T hold. Okay, and remember within this sampling window, the data is remaining stable. The data has to remain stable. This is the sampling window, and this is also going to become your T. Within this, our data would remain stable, and then look here, that data is being transmitted and it reaches at the output somewhere here. Initial value at the Q was X, so it takes some time for that X to change to Y. So there may be a minimum value, there may be a maximum value depending on input pattern, whatever you are transmitting, logic 1 or logic 0. So there may be a minimum value, there can also be a maximum delay value. So minimum value is TC clock to Q and maximum value is TD clock to Q. So we can have two different clock to Q delays. Okay, so this is all that we have with respect to the edge triggered flip flop. And now if I show you a latch properties, timing properties. So as I said, the sampling property is attached to the falling edge. Because when the latch closes, I have to ensure that whatever goes inside is correct. The data is getting stored in the latch, so that is when the latch closes, I have to attach my sampling property to that instant. Okay? Whereas the clock to Q delay is attached to the rising edge when the latch opens up. Okay? So this is the same thing again from the middle of the waveform till data is stable is TS. From the middle of the waveform till data is stable is T hold. Okay? So T setup, T hold. This Y takes little time to reach Q. It is passing through a latch now. It is not passing through a HT flip flop. Okay, it is passing through a latch. Data is getting passed through a latch. So first, whatever is getting stored inside the latch. Okay, you have to understand that data getting stored should be correct. The wrong value should not go down. So when latch is closing, clock is going down, the latch is closing because I have a metastable condition. Latch is neither turned off completely nor turned on completely. So any glitch in the data can cause the data to get corrupted. That is why a sampling property is attached to the falling edge. That is when the latch is closed. Okay. So if there is a data change over here, suppose clock is already on, so latch is already on, and there is a glitch happening. Suppose due to some reason the data changes. Maybe a glitch. That's what I'm saying. Whatever glitch is happening, let it happen only till here. From here to here should be your reset. So from change of data till you get it at the Q. So T, again, two values, maximum and minimum. So data to Q minimum and data to Q. Similarly, now we have the clock to Q delay, again two things. Okay, that is again a maxima and a minima, data to Q maximum and data to Q minimum. Rabe calls the minimum delay as contamination delay. Rabe calls it as a contamination delay. And he doesn't specify a maximum or a minimum clock to Q. But then it is to be understood that naturally if there is a variation in the input pattern, the delays will change. The delay will change. So we have a maximum value and we have a minimum value. So once we have this, I think the next things are very clear. Signaling I will not take right now. Signaling I will take when we will discuss the wires. Because the flow of data is linked with the wires. So whether you are using a current mode signaling or a CMOS signaling, they have their own repercussions depending on how much time the signal will take to move from one end of the wire to the next end of the wire. And how does signaling change the power consumption requirements? Okay, so this I would take up. Here in the slide, I would be discussing it at the time of discussing interconnections or the wires. So we move on to the timing. I will continue with my timing over here. So this I am all skipping. Okay, this is, I think you all know, very common diagram, you might have already read about it. Okay, so very quickly we will go through a receiver, another receiver, or simple flip-flop, another flip-flop. So this is what is actually the terminology used by the Rabe. So we have the properties coming from the receiver or transmitter as clock to Q, maxima, clock to Q minima, T setup and T hold. If there is a combination logic in between, there would be a minimum combination logic, there would be maximum combination logic. So T logic maximum or T logic. Similarly, receiver will be identical to transmitter. This is how I would be saying. This is, I am showing you a 1-bit transmission. So if there are multiple bit transmission, naturally the total cycle time will get divided by, remember that, if it is a serial communication. Okay. This is clear. This is clear to all of you. What does it signify? That the total cycle time the clock should have should be determined by this equation. That is, if there is a change in data, if this opens up and causes the output to move on to the combination logic, there would be a delay involved. So there would be a clock to Q delay, plus there would be a combination logical delay, plus there would be a Receiver delay. Why should receiver have a delay? Why should receiver have? Because there is a setup time constraint coming from the receiver. Okay, so we should have that setup time in our consideration. Here, nothing is added about timing uncertainty of my. Nothing is added. There is a hold time constraint. Now I ask you, why is there a hold time constraint? Why is there a hold time constraint? That is, a previous data is here, moving from here, reaching here, and then getting settled here. Okay. Now, by the time you have a second data, you should not have corruption, overlapping of the data. At any point of time, this must not happen. So, what is the hold time constraint doing here? So, minimum delay. It takes a minimum delay a bit will take to move from transmitter to receiver. And that is related to the contamination delays. Okay. So, minimum delay that it is taking is the clock to QCD and logic CD. Minimum time taken from here plus minimum time taken, it would be available at the end of the receiver. And by the time if receiver is not closed, by the time if receiver is not fully closed, whatever is stored in that will corrupt it. Remember what happens? This, whatever is stored in this will get the data from the previous logic. This will get the value from this logic. Okay? At any point of time, this should not happen that this has got stored here and by the time a new value has come in, because it is such a pattern that takes minimal value, immediately goes through this and again moves to the further stage within the same time period. Just to avoid that race condition, we have a hold time constraint which says that receiver at any point of time will not be taking a bit which should come to him in the next clock cycle. Which should come to it in the next clock cycle. So receiver should be closed. Receiver should be minimum time. So T hold should be that much. It should be that much. So once we have skew is known to you, spatial variation, we have a positive skew, we have a negative skew. You all know this diagram. Okay, and then the effect of positive skew. You all know that. How to add plus delta and minus delta. When to add. What will happen here? This will add a component delta to your T cycle or not? Or it will subtract. What it would do? Your T cycle will increase or T cycle will decrease? T cycle will decrease. Why? Because of skew, anyway you are getting more time for data to move from one block to the next block. So actually you can operate your T cycle at a lesser time period because skew will give you that additional advantage. Okay, and then we have a negative skew. It's a reverse. It is a reverse. Now here the time cycle period has to be enhanced because you are getting less time because of skew. You are getting. Now remember in papers what I have seen the reverse. I've seen the reverse, that is positive skew there. Whatever we are calling a negative skew here they call it as a positive skew. In some of the IEEE research publications, this is the case. So for me, I suppose that this terminology is not a standard terminology. The terminology which is used in the Rabe's book may not be standard. Whereas the Friedman's journals, Friedman's papers, if you find, who has done very extensive work on clock distribution network, he describes it in a reverse fashion. So don't get confused. So once we have that, now come to the zeta. Zeta is clear? Okay. So is it always added to your T cycle or is it again changes its sign to your T cycle? It is always added. Why is it not subtracted? Worst case. Worst case. Everybody knows because I'm going by some few people who are saying, so I'm going by their responses. You know all these things? Okay. So once we have this, I think now, if you include all the timing jitter, can you modify this, all these values? Okay? All the timing delays when you are including the clock skew, and you are taking the clock jitter, uncertainties are coming into picture. So whatever timing properties we were having for H-triggered flip-flop, they will undergo a change. A small exercise I am giving it to you. Okay, this book is Daniel Porter's book. Okay, just try to do it on your own. How does the timing property change in all these timing properties? That everything I'm looking at from all possible angles. Okay, how does all these values they change? Don't go for n bit. I'm saying only 1 bit data transmission. Only 1 bit. I may be the ith may be the transmitter and I plus 1th may be the receiver. Just try to do it whether you are able to derive all these equations in the event of uncertainties of the clock. So uncertainty in the arrival of the clock, uncertainty in the arrival of the day. Okay. Try to create this. We'll discuss it once again. So once we have done this, I think this is clear. I need not go through you people. So I now come to the latch based design. You have done this? Have you done this? Latch based pipelining? No, nobody has. So let us discuss how does latch helps us. Okay. So here we have, normally we have to go for two-phase non-overlapping clock. See how good a timing convention is. That is, it uses minimum resources. Okay, and there are minimum errors coming. It gives you full control. Okay, and you are able to achieve a high data rate. So any timing convention is, you can say it is checked against these parameters. How effective is a timing convention or timing nomenclature is. So this has come into picture because of the requirement of achieving a higher data rate. Otherwise, nobody would have left the H-triggered based system because it is highly robust. Okay, but to achieve a high data rate, latch-based design was brought into, and the reason was that use of slack. So what is the slack here? Because the latch is actually a kind of transparent throughout its high period or the low period, whereas a flip-flop is only transparent at the edge. So latch gives you that added benefit. Okay, so what happens that suppose I have a data flow and that data gets stored in the latch, and suppose it takes less time. So I have the total latch half cycle, high period or low period is say 50 nanoseconds, and my data is taking only 20 nanoseconds. So that means rest of 30 nanoseconds it is not doing anything. It has already got stored within the latch. So what a latch-based design can do is that it is possible for us to use or pass on this 30 nanoseconds to the next. This is known as the usage of the slack. And because of this additional timing available to the next or to the previous, there is a possibility of achieving a high data rate. But then I'm not going to use a single phase clock. We cannot use, because we will be using a single phase clock in the H-triggered synchronous system. Here you cannot use a single phase clock. You have to go for two-phase clocking system. So that means two non-overlapping phases have to be generated. Why? Why do you require a two-phase clocking system here? Because if the first state opens up in high phase, the other stage will open up in the low phase. They need to be isolated from each other. That is why I should have alternate stages turning on in alternate phases of the clock. So two-phase clocking system is this. That means now think of the clock distribution. So I need to duplicate the CDNs. Clock distribution. One for transmitting high phase of the clock and one for transmitting the low phase of the clock. Now you may say that why should we have to duplicate two CDNs? Why should we have two CDNs? I can generate a low phase by putting an inverter. What problem will come up when you put up an inverter? and delay will come. So if I have my clock edge going high here, at the same instant, for the next stage, I will have my clock edge going below at little delay after. Little delay after. That means there is a certain period in which both the stages are on simultaneously. This is also high and this is also high and then goes low after a certain instant. That means for a certain duration there is an overlap period where both stages are becoming high. Whereas my aim is that when one is high, other must be low. Then only I can have a controlled flow of data. There is no chance of having a race. Okay, so generating two phases of a clock necessitates using two-phase clocking system. I cannot generate a simple complementary phase of the clock by using an inverter. Else, in your T cycle, you have to take care of the T overlap. It has to be modified. The T overlap has to come in. Okay, so this is a drawback of using a latch-based design, but then it will give you a possibility of achieving a high data rate. So as I said, nothing is good and nothing is thoroughly bad in this nature. Everything has its own good points and the bad points. So whatever suits the best, you choose and you decide. We generate two-phase clocks. From a master clock, we generate two phases of the clock which are completely non-overlapping. That is, when one is high, other has a low phase. When suppose I generate clock 1 and clock 2 from master clock. So clock 1 is a high phase, so clock 2 will be in a low phase. Whereas clock 1 is a low phase, other would be high phase. A completely non-overlapping phases have to be generated. The same thing we have for 4-phase clocking system also. There are certain cases where we have to go for 4-phase clocking. I think we discussed this when we were discussing, remember, the comparators, where we were removing what that we were calling that as the what we calling as offset removal. So we were turning on the capacitors or stages one by one. So first stage was turned on, then second stage was turned on. Then can you see the phases of a clock that we were using? They were all phase shifted by a certain duration. So when one is on, second is off, then the second goes high. Then here we have a perfect non-overlapping phase that first is high, this is low, then this goes high, this is low, then this goes high, then this is low. The perfect non-overlapping. This is usually done by using, I think that you people all have done that NOR-based SR flip-flop and NAND-based. You can easily done it by using those structures. So let us understand its operation. Latch-based design operation. A pipeline that I am creating, data is getting flowing from one block to the next block. So this is your, you can say, you have a chain of pipeline. Okay, so we have a combination logical block A, we have CLB-B, CLB-C and CLB-D. Okay, so what is my nominal operation is that when the clock goes high, data moves from D to Q, gets processed by this block and is available at the edge B. Okay, this also turns high, so whatever was initially present here, the next cycle it will come through this, gets processed, moves here. In the next cycle, it passes through this, moves here, gets processed, and then be available at this point. When I say it would be available at this point, remember, it is going to be a dynamic storage of the data. Dynamic storage of the data. What do I mean by dynamic storage or soft node? This is going to be a soft node. What is a soft node storage? Because this interconnection will be having a kind of a capacitor over there. So whatever data is present, it would be stored across that capacitor. Also, this would be composed of MOSFETs. So the input capacitance, CGS, of that capacitor, of those MOS transistor will act as a load over here. So whatever is the logic here, logic 0, logic 1 gets stored across that capacitor. I call that capacitive load as a soft, or this node as a soft node. Why? Why we call it as a soft node? I say this is a soft node. Why? Why is this a soft node? Because data is not getting refreshed. There's a chance that this data may get lost. Due to what? Due to leakage currents, sub-threshold current. Because when this is supposed in an off state, even then the path is having a leakage currents. Path is having a leakage currents. And these leakage currents can cause, if there's a one stored over here, I have a sub-threshold current. Suppose the NMOS section is off here. I have a logic 1 over here, which has come to it through the upper pull-up path. Pull-down path is off, but pull-down has leakage currents, reverse saturation current, or the sub-threshold currents. So slowly this data may get leak off. There would be a certain time within, I can compute T hold, we call it as worst case holding time, where we say, okay, within this time, the data will completely be lost. I do not want this data to completely go off, because now what minima I can tolerate over here? What's the minimum? Suppose it is a 5 volts. Suppose the VDD initially getting stored over here. So how much low it can go before I can have a loss of functionality within this pipeline? VIH. V input high. What is V input high? What is V input high? Anybody from Goa campus? What is V input high?
Minimum voltage which can be treated as considered as one logic high.
Logic. Very good. So what I feel is that if this is a flip-flop, suppose it's a simple D flip-flop, this node will be connected to the inverter inside. So inverter, if this is V, for me, I should have a, suppose 0 or whatever it may be, 1 getting stored for that at the output of that inverter. So if it gets reduced below VIH, the functionality of my next inverter will change, which will be a part of my latch or the flip-flop design. So I do not. So all I say is that VDD and VIH is at 3 volts or 3.5 volts. I should not allow my data to leak, voltage to leak from 5 volts to 3.3. Is that this range is not tolerable? I should not allow it to go below this. Because if it goes below, then my functionality is lost. So we can compute how much is your reverse saturation current. Accordingly, how much time will it take to leak the voltage from 5 volts to say 3.5 volts. Accordingly, I have to use my data before. I should use the data before that. That means the value stored over here should get inside and move forward before it gets leak off. That is why all these nodes, these are soft nodes. That means we have to ensure that before the data leaks off, it moves further in the chain. It moves forward in the chain. So we pre-calculate. Accordingly, we say, okay, for this much data rate, how much time my data will remain stored, and it should be less than the time the data leaks off. Otherwise, if this is not so, what should I do to have the data functionality not to be lost? I should arrange for refresh. Every node should get refreshed. So this is the difference between a DRAM or dynamic implementation and a static implementation. Static implementation, we have continuous refresh happening. Whereas the case of a dynamic implementation, the refresh is absent, and we have to ensure that data is lost before it completely leaks off at that point. Okay. So now, this is my nominal operation, and this is how I can show it with respect of this my clock waveform, assuming clock is ideal. So there is no ramp. I am not considering any ramp in the clock waveform. So when A edge comes, my data just turns on, assuming there is 0 delay for this. 0 clock to Q delay for this. So when this turns on, A is available here. So this is the launch of A. Okay, then it gets processed. It gets processed. It's a H triggered flip flop. So by the time it reaches here, it's a H triggered operation. I will have. So it should be available. Okay, this is what. So we are using two different clocks. So latch here, not the H triggered operation. It's a latch and latch. So this is turning on, so this is off. So when this turns on, this goes on. So they are moving in alternate fashion. Look here, clock 1 going high, so clock 2 is low. Then clock 1 goes low, so clock 2 is high. So they are non-overlapping clock phases. These are non-overlapping clock phases, and these are latches. So when this turns on, okay, data moves from here to here and reaches here. By the time clock 2 should go high. So when the data is available at B, I will have clock 2 going high. This turns on and data this moves from B to C, gets processed, reaches D. So by the time this latch turns off and this again turns on, this one turns on, I have a data available at this instant. This would be the nominal operation without any slack passing consideration. Is there a time is over? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I'm leaving it right now. We'll start from the beginning, the nominal operation. We'll be discussing it in the next class. Okay. Fine, thank you.